Namo Buddhaya. Welcome to yet another new video from Introduction to Buddhism video series. From today's video, we are going to discuss about the question, who exactly is the Buddha? Now, Buddha, the word Buddha is a title name given to a person who has realized the true nature behind the life through his own wisdom. Now, the word Buddha can be translated into English as fully awakened one or fully enlightened one. Now, according to the Buddhist teachings, there have been many Buddhas even in the past. But then who is the Buddha that we see in these kind of pictures like this and this? Now, his name is Siddhartha Gautama, the Supreme Buddha. He is considered to be the seventh Buddha to be appeared within 100 eons. Now, what's an eon? Eon is an indefinite and a very large amount of time that cannot be counted. So, within 100 eons, there have been only 7 Buddhas. The Buddha mentions the rarity of the Buddhas as follows in Dhammapada. In 182nd verse, the Buddha mentions like this: "It is difficult to be born as human. Difficult is the life of beings. It is difficult to gain the opportunity to hear the true Dharma. And rare is the appearance of the Buddhas." Now, this shows that the Buddhas or the appearance of the Buddhas are very rare to this world. So what exactly is the Buddhahood? Let's hear it from the Buddha himself. In his first sermon, the Buddha mentions this as follows. The Buddha says, "But when my knowledge and vision in 3 phases and 12 aspects was thoroughly purified in this way regarding these 4 noble truths, then I claim to have awakened to the unsurpassed, perfect enlightenment in this world." Now, this statement shows that one becomes a Buddha with a thorough and a pure realization of 4 noble truths in 3 phases and 12 aspects. Now, what are these 3 phases and 12 aspects? We will discuss it in the future videos when we discuss the 4 noble truths in detail. But for now, you can understand that one becomes a Buddha by a thorough and a purified realization of 4 noble truths. So then, was the Buddha a god or a prophet, or was he just a human being like us? Now, this was a very common question that was asked from the Buddha by the people when they met the Buddha for the first time. Now, at one time, a person named Dona meets the Buddha and asks this question. He asked, "Master, are you a deity?" Then the Buddha said, "No, Dona, I'm not a deity." Then he asked, "Are you then a demigod or a Gandhabba?" Then the Buddha says, "No, I'm not a Gandhabba." And then the Dona asked, "Are you then a demon?" Then the Buddha says, "No, I'm not a demon." Then finally he asked, "Then are you a human being?" Then the Buddha said, "No, I'm not a human being either." Now, Dona was so surprised and confused, and he said that when I asked from you, "Are you a deity?" you said no. When I asked from you, "Are you a Gandhabba?" you said no. When I asked from you, "Are you a demon?" then you said no. When I asked from you, "Are you a human?" you said no. Then what exactly are you? Then the Buddha says this as follows. The Buddha says, "Brahmin, I have abandoned those stains because of which I might have become a deva or a deity. And I have cut them off at the root, made them like palm stumps, obliterated them so that they are no longer subjected to future arising. I have abandoned those stains, just as a blue or a white lotus flower, though born in the water and grown up in the water, rises above the water and stands unsoiled by the water. Even so, though born in the world and grown up in the world, I have overcome the world and dwell unsoiled by the world. Remember me, Brahmin, as a Buddha." So then Buddha was neither a god, nor a prophet, nor an average human being like us. he achieved something extraordinary than an average human being. So he wasn't a god or a prophet, he was the Buddha. So then one can ask that, did the Buddha invent Buddhism by himself? Or was it just a mind-made philosophy that was invented by the Buddha? Now, Buddha mentioned about this in one of his sutras as follows. Buddha makes his teachings similar to a city, a long-lost city. A man wandering through the jungle, and he finds this city that was long lost, and it is covered with foliation. It was an ancient city. Now he sees this city and he goes back to the king and says to the king that, I saw this city in the middle of the jungle. Please go and renovate the city. So that the king goes to that city, king finds that city and renovates it. And after some time, it becomes populated with beings and people. And also it becomes a prosperous and an expanded city. Now, same like that, the Buddha says, so too, bhikkhus, I saw the ancient path, the ancient road traveled by the perfectly enlightened one of the past. And what's that ancient path and that ancient road? It is this noble eightfold path. That is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. I followed that path, and by doing so, I have directly known aging and death, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. Having directly known them, I have explained them to the bhikkhus, the bhikkhunis, the male lay followers, and the female lay followers. This holy life, bhikkhus, has become successful and prosperous, extended, popular, and widespread, well proclaimed among devas and humans. Now, then this shows that the Buddha did not invent the Buddha's teachings. Buddha was the founder. Buddha followed the path and he found the long-lost Noble Eightfold Path, the true realization of this world, and he opened that path to the world, to us. In Dhammapada, the Buddha mentioned this as follows. You yourself must make a strong effort to attain Nibbana. Buddhas only point the way. Those who follow the path and those who meditate will be freed from Mara's bonds. Now, this shows that Buddha did not invent the Buddha's teachings. He was the person who shows the path. He found the path and he shows the path to all of us. After serving this world for 45 years as the Buddha, he passed away at the age of 80, and this was his final message to the world. The Buddha said, Behold now, bhikkhus, I exhort you. All compounded things are subjected to vanish. Strive with earnestness. Now this shows us that the Buddha showed us a great path for the liberation from all the unsatisfied nature and the sufferings from life. And also, he showed us the path of the wisdom and kindness. So the Buddha wasn't a salvator. The Buddha was the greatest teacher who shows you the path of liberation. It is our duty, it is our job to walk the path and find the liberation. So this is a little glimpse about the Buddha's life and his work. So I think that you got some idea about the Buddha and his work. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Namo Buddhaya. How do I become a Buddhist? And how I convert to Buddhism? This is an FAQ that most of the Buddhist monks been asked by people. They ask like, how can I become an officially Buddhist? How can I convert to Buddhism? Well, when you ask that question, it is very difficult to give an exact way of converting to Buddhism, like ceremonial way, because in other religions there is this process, there is a ceremonial way of converting to that religion, like baptism, right? But it is in Buddhism, and there is no process or there is no ceremony of baptism, right? But the process, the way that is a process that is very closer to the conversion, that you can say converting to Buddhism, is going for refuge to the triple gems, or going for refuge to the three refuges in Buddhism. Now, we've discussed about the three refuges in Buddhism in another video. If you like to learn about what three jewels and three refuges in Buddhism are, you can check out that video as well. So the three jewels or three refuges in Buddhism is, first one is the Buddha, right? Or the historical Buddha himself. And the second jewel or second refuge in Buddhism is the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. And the third refuge is the Sangha, or the monastic community. So if you follow the Buddhist path, one must take refuge in these three refuges, right? Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Buddha and Buddha's teachings and the monastic community. Now, why we go refuge to the Buddha? There's a reason behind it. We go for refuge to the Buddha considering him as our inspiration, right? We always look up to his life, way of life, right? And we adopt those valuable qualities to our life. We try to follow his life, character, right? Although we can't follow it for the perfection, we must try to do that. We must learn from his life, right? So as the inspiration, as the role model of our spiritual path, spiritual practice, we go refuge to the Buddha. That is the purpose behind going refuge to the Buddha. And the second, the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings, why we go for refuge to the Buddha's Dhamma or Buddha's teachings is because it provides the framework for the spiritual practice, right? It provides this framework to us to follow the path. Okay, so we must have the confidence to follow that. It doesn't mean that you have to blindly believe it, right? It doesn't mean that you have to have the blind faith. You cannot have any questions, right? In Buddhism, there is no anything that is unquestionable, right? Everything can be questioned, right? You may have doubts, you can have doubts, right? Doubts are always seen as sign of improvements according to Buddhism, because Buddha says that if someone thinks, right? If someone thinks about the reality of life, he may have some questions, right? So that he goes on asking the questions, what is the meaning behind this life, right? What should I know? How should I see this life? So when he asks questions, then he gets the answers, okay? In that way, he must seek something. So in Buddhism, we follow the Buddha's teachings by asking questions and by self-exploration and putting it into practice, not just because merely we believe in it. Okay, that is the purpose of going refuge to the Buddha's teachings. It provides us the spiritual framework. And why we go for refuge to the Sangha or the monastic community is because they provide us the spiritual support, the living spiritual support, right? So to get that spiritual support, we need to have confidence on them. So what we do, we go for refuge to the Sangha, right? So these are the three refuges in Buddhism. Now, how to go refuge to the Buddha and Dhamma and Sangha, or these three jewels and three refuges? There is this traditional way of doing it, that is by chanting it, that Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. We chant it for 3 times. And that is the traditional way of going for refuge. You can closely say that this is the way of converting to Buddhism. But here's the thing. Just because you said it, or just because you chanted that Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, I go for refuge to the Buddha, I go for refuge to the Dhamma, I go for refuge to the Sangha, the monastic community, doesn't mean you actually become a Buddhist, right? Because all these refuges follows and it provides a purpose. We need something to do in it. So what we need to do is we need to follow the path, follow the practice, follow the Buddha's advice, right? If you're following the Buddha's advice and if you're putting it into practice, okay, if you're practicing it within you, then you can call yourself as a Buddhist. But understand, the term Buddhist did not exist in the Buddha's time, right? One of the closest words that we can find, that is, we can call to as a Buddhist, is an ancient word is Buddha Savaka, which gives the meaning of listeners of the Buddha or followers of the Buddha, right? So to become a follower of the Buddha, you can't just merely chant it and just it becomes okay. It doesn't happen like that. Okay, what do you have to do? If you are a follower, you must follow it. You must practice it, right? And confidence in Buddhism or faith in Buddhism always seen like a questionable way of understanding, right? Explore it by yourself, see it for yourself, find it for yourself, and then take it into yourself. Okay, so that is the way to become a Buddhist in the true Buddhist, right? Remember that just because you said that you are a Buddhist, or just because you chanted these lines that I go for refuge to the Buddha, doesn't mean that you truly become a Buddhist. What you have to do is put it into practice. Live in that practice. Okay, so I hope you got some idea about how to become a Buddhist. So in a short answer, there is no conversion or no baptism in Buddhism. What you need to do is follow the Buddha's path. Keep this in your mind. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Have you seen those people who are walking on slack lines or cables? They do these amazing stunts on these cables. Now, you may think that it is an easy task to do. No, it is the most difficult thing to be balanced on that cable. It is very easy to fall into either sides. Same goes with our life. It's the most difficult thing for us to be balanced, to balance our inner self and the outer self, right? So from this video, I would like to talk with you about an important place, an important area of us to be balanced, right? This is the area of we helping others. I read this wonderful quote. That is the reason that I wanted to make this video. I read this wonderful quote in a place that says, to not lose yourself in the name of helping others, right? That is amazing, right? For an example, let's say there is an empty jar or an empty vessel, right? Can you fill other cups with this empty jar? No, you can't. If you need to fill other cups, then you need to fill the jar first. In the same way, the Buddha says that you need to fill yourself, you need to take care of yourself, right? You need to improve yourself in order to help others, right? But it is very easy for us to be it in an extreme. Let's say if you're someone who is committing the fullest in yourself on the happiness of others, on the benefit of others, on the betterment of others, right? If you are a parent, if you are someone, if you in your relationships, let's say you are committing your fullest self to maintain this relationship and to help others and to make others happy, right? This can be an extreme. This can go to an extreme where you lose your character, you lose your identity, and you lose who you are in the name of helping that person, right? From the other person's perspective, it is a good thing to do. It's a great help for that person. But when you too much helping others without taking care of yourself, when you forget to take care of yourself, there are certain downsides that occurs in your life. One of them being, the more you help without improving yourself, you reduce the quality of your help, right? You reduce the amount, the productivity of help that you're going to give to that person, right? Now, with the time when the quality reduces, that person is not getting what they got before. And they will complain, why you are not giving me, why you are not committing your fullest self for this? But in reality, you're doing it while losing who you are. Okay? So that is why the Buddha said it is really important to balance that, to be in balance when you help others. So the Buddha gave a wonderful simile or a metaphor to understand about this. Buddha said, be like a cow, a mother cow who has a baby calf. What do you mean by that? That means, the Buddha said, there are two jobs for a mother cow to do. One is that she should graze. She should first feed herself. Okay, she should eat grass and graze and feed herself. And also the other job is to take care of the baby calf. She should give milk to the baby calf, right? What if this baby calf, what if this mother cow forget one job? Okay, one of these jobs. Let's say the mother wanted to only to graze and feed herself and not take care of the baby. What happened? The baby calf will die eventually. What if the mother only gave milk, only be focused on giving milk to the baby calf? Then the baby calf will survive, but mother will die eventually, right? So in the same way, the Buddha said, for monks, as monks, we live and we are committed to a spiritual life, right? That is the sole purpose of entering a monkhood, to live a spiritual life, to be more focused on the spirituality. Now, when you do that, it doesn't mean you don't help others. You don't help and you don't work on others' happiness, right? But when you do that, okay, one part of our monkshood is to help other people with Dhamma, with Buddha's teachings, and helping with doing charity and doing helping them with emotionally, right? When you do that, there is this part, we forget our main idea. We forget our main goal, why we came to this monkhood. And our jobs go in the other way. Okay, sometimes it's very easy for us to be engaged in charity, to help other people and be there for other people when they need. But when you do that, sometimes we forget to improve ourselves. So the Buddha said, it is the monk's duty to maintain this balance in the spiritual life while doing all the works and the chores and the duties in the monastery, right? While helping other monks and helping to the monastery, he must take care of his spiritual practice as well. He must be balanced in that as well. So to do that, you have to be like a mother cow who is feeding her baby and taking care of her as well. So keep it in your mind that yes, you need to help other people. It is very good to help other people. And if you need to give your fullest self, if you need to make others happy, that will make you happy, what do you have to do? First, we need to improve ourselves. Okay, so that is why it is really important to have some time during the day to take care of yourself. I like to call this me time. I have this me time every single day. No matter what duties that I have, I spend time for myself, learning something, maybe practicing something to myself, to my benefit, so that I can help you people and people around the world in a more good way, in a greater way. Okay, so it is really important for all of us to balance this help to others and also help to ourselves. So I wish that you got some idea about this balance in life. So I wish may all of you be healthy, happy, and free from sufferings. Namo Buddhaya. Okay, we are going to answer this question. This is one of the most common questions that most of the young people ask from me. Can Buddhism be explained through science? First of all, before answering this question, we need to clarify what is the objective of science and what is the objective of Buddhism. The objective of science, to simply say, to observe the outer world, explore the outer world. For an example, science, what science does is it observes this outer world, the planets, how the world works, how the nature works, how the technology works, how the current works, how the atoms, protons, neutrons, quarks, and this dark matter, everything works. The outer world, the material world. While Buddhism explores how it works within you, right? How the world that is within you works. Your mind, your consciousness, your perception, right? How these things form and how these things work. And also, Buddhism gives you the support to make your life, make your inner self better. Okay? So, to simply say, science explores the outer world, and Buddhism and spirituality, spiritual practices, explore the inner world. Okay? Now one can ask, can I explain Buddhism and can I prove Buddhism that is true through science? Not always you can do that. Because if you try to understand Buddhism through this perspective of science, through the scope of and through the frame of science, it's something like this. You're trying to explain something that goes into two opposite ways. Because science observes the outer world and Buddhism and spiritual practices observe the inner world. Can you fully explain what is within you through the science? No, because there are some parts that goes beyond the scientific experiments, scientific explanations. Okay? And there are some parts that spiritual practices and all these practices doesn't agree with science. Okay? So we need to understand that these two things serve different purposes, that we need to use these two things in different contexts and different places, because we need both. One can say, I've heard people say that we don't need science, we just need spirituality, we just need Buddhism, we just need meditation. No. Without science, right, without the advancement of the science, how can we thrive, right? How can we make this world a better place? Look around us, right? Look how many things that science, how much better things that science has made. For an example, I'm talking to you, right? You're watching this video. Why? With the help of the science. Okay? So yes, we need science to thrive. We need science to make this world a better place, right? But we need to understand, science only cannot make this world a better place. Because science can make the material things better, give you the material comfort, make everything convenient, right? Make everything comes to your tip of your hand, right? And understand everything, the complexities of this universe. Science will do that. While Buddhism, spirituality will answer your spiritual problems, right? To make your life a better one, make your inner self more kind, right? More compassionate, more calmer person, right? It will help you to build up your inner qualities, inner values, right? So we need to practice and we need to understand these two things together, but we should not mess these things up. Okay? So then the question is, can Buddhism be explained through science? Up to some part, not everything. Okay, because simply it goes into two different ways. Okay, so we need to understand science as science, right? When we learn science and when we understand science, we need to understand it as it is. And when we come to Buddhism, we should not take the perspective of science to Buddhism and understand it, right? We should understand it as it is, because it serves a different purpose. So when you practice these two in balance, right? And when you understand clearly what are the purpose of these two practices are, then it will be easy for you to practice and develop your outer self and also develop your inner self. Okay, so I hope you got some idea about the science and Buddhism. So I wish you all, may you be healthy, may you be happy, and may you be peaceful. Namo Buddhaya. One of the questions that people ask from me is that they ask, is it easy being a monk? Well, I give them the answer, no, it's not easy, right? So many people think that after becoming a monk, all the problems will disappear like you're floating on a peaceful cloud, Trust me, it doesn't happen, right? Monk's life is difficult, as same as any other life, right? It is not easy, because if you look at our life, right, where no matter what the life is, right, no matter what level of life is, there will always be difficulties, problems, challenges. That is the nature of life. That is what the Buddha said to us. The Buddha said, that is the first noble truth. What is it? Dukkha. Where there is birth, there is dukkha. There is this unsatisfied nature. There is this suffering. There is this nature of unsatisfaction, dissatisfaction. So you may think, if you're thinking that after becoming a monk, all the problems will disappear. It's not. It doesn't happen, right? But here's the thing. Yes, there is some part of the problems that you face as a householder. After becoming a monk, they will disappear, right? That is made from this lifestyle itself, right? For an example, as a householder, you have to maintain a family life, right? A family. So that part is not there in the monk's life. And as a householder, you have to have these relationships. You have to have your husband or wife, children. As a monk, you don't have them, right? And also, then as a householder, you will get invited to a lot of occasions, parties, weddings, and all the stuff. As monks, we don't go to the weddings and parties, right? So we live in the monastery. So those kind of problems, those kind of things, they will be removed by the lifestyle itself. But that doesn't mean the lifestyle becomes this monk's life is easier. Because we also have some other duties to do, right? We have also other responsibilities to do. After doing all of those things, there are the things that are easier to do actually. At the end of the day, after becoming a monk, what you're really focusing on is your spirituality, your mind. A monk is someone who is totally dedicated to the spiritual practice, his own spiritual practice, and also the spirituality and the spiritual development of the people around him. So when you work on that, right, you will face a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges. One of the biggest challenges that we face as monks is to discipline our mind. Right? As soon as you become a monk, your mind is not ready to become a monk. Okay? I always say this for people, that it takes very few minutes to make a monk physically, like become a monk physically. But it takes a lifelong practice to become a monk within, from the mind. Okay? So we are on the path of making our mind a monk. Okay? So understand that becoming a monk is not easy, okay? Same as any other life. They will have problems. They will have difficulties, right? And also, I would like to say, yes, monk's life is difficult, but monk's life is beautiful. Why do I say difficult? Because there are some difficulties, challenges that you face as any other life. That is one part, okay? And why would I say that monk's life is beautiful is that the lifestyle is made your life to be so much simple. For an example, we don't have much clothes, right? We only have 3 robes to wear. And also we don't have many things that as materials. For an example, we have only 3 robes, and we have only 1 alms bowl, and also a couple of books that we are using. And all the other utensils that we use in the monastery are they're for the monastery, right? When we leave the monastery, we have to leave them behind and you have to go. The only thing that remains with you that you consider as yours, your materials, is your 3 robes and some couple of books, and also your alms bowl. That is the only thing that is remain. So the lifestyle is made to make your life so much simpler, okay? And the practices that we do, the monastic practices that we do, is made to make your life so much simpler and easier. And the precepts that we follow, that was given by the Buddha, the codes that we follow, is made to make the monk's life so much simpler, hassle-free, and more focused into the spirituality. So yes, there is one part of the beautiful part of the monk's life. Okay, that is beautiful. And the other part that I love to enjoy in monk's life is that being a monk, you get the opportunity to meet so many people, right? Being a preaching monk, I get this opportunity. I'm very lucky to have this in my life. I get to meet a lot of people. I get to meet a lot of people, and I get to talk with them, right? I can listen to their ideas. I can listen to their problems. I can share the Buddha's teachings with them and help them. And when I share the Buddha's teachings with them and when they get the help, it gives me a great happiness, right? So that part I love to enjoy, okay? And also another beautiful thing that you find in monk's life is that Every single morning when you wake up, you have something wholesome to do, something that is selfless to do, right? When you wake up and when you clean your monastery, when you do the monastic chores, it gives you that idea that yes, you're doing something for yourself as well as the others also. So these are the parts that we enjoy as monks, okay? And also one part, this is not only separated for monks' life, but also anyone can do that. We enjoy by listening and learning the Buddha's teachings, okay? You get a lot of time to learn the Buddha's teachings and observe and analyze the Buddha's teachings and practice the Buddha's teachings. So these are the beautiful parts of the monk's life. So don't think that monk's life is easy and hassle-free and problemless. No, as any other life, we also have problems, but we are working through them, right? We are practicing our mind to make our mind strong enough to face these problems, face these challenges through the Buddha's teachings. So I hope you got some idea about monk's life. So I wish you, may you be happy and may you be healthy. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Welcome everyone to another video. From today's video, I would like to share some thoughts about going for refuge to these three jewels or three refuges in Buddhism. Now, traditionally, all Buddhists go for refuge to these three gems or three jewels. And in other words, we call them three refuges, right? And it is a traditional way. And most of the time, the traditional Buddhists, they do it as a chanting, right? Whenever they do their prayers, they say, Buddhang saranang gacchami, I go for refuge to the Buddha. Dhammang saranang gacchami, I go for refuge to the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. Sanghang saranang gacchami, I go for refuge to the Sangha, the monastic and the spiritual community. So one can think, okay, it is same like the other religions, you know. You go for refuge, you believe in this Buddha and his teachings and the monastic community, it is same. But if you take a closer look at going for refuge, the process of going for refuge, there's a clear reason why we do this, right? And also we have to remember that just because we chanted Buddhang saranang gacchami, or just because we chanted that I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, doesn't mean that you truly go for refuge to the Buddha. Okay, so there's a way to do that. So let's discuss how we should do this. First of all, what are these three jewels? The first jewel or the first refuge in Buddhism is called Buddha. Buddha is the historical Buddha, the greatest teacher who taught the Buddhist teachings to all of us. The greatest teacher who taught the reality of life. So we consider him as the teacher, right? The guiding light of our life. So why we go for refuge to the Buddha? Sometimes some people can say, okay, now you're believing the Buddha as a god. No, it is not the same way, because Buddha wasn't a god, and nor did the Buddha claim himself to be a god, right? So the Buddha was a simple human like all of us who achieved something beyond that an average human could achieve, the liberation. So why we go for refuge to the Buddha? It is because he's the biggest role model of our life, right? So to have an inspiration from a character, we go for refuge to the Buddha. When we go through the difficult times and hard times in our life, we can always relate to the Buddha's life and say, okay, if Buddha faced such kind of adversities and difficulties, how would Buddha do this, right? So then you can follow the Buddha's life and Buddha's role model. You take the Buddha as the role model and it becomes the biggest inspiration for our life. So that is why we go for refuge to the Buddha, right? So the correct way to go for refuge to the Buddha is to consider the Buddha as the biggest role model of our life, and to learn from his character and to follow his character as well, okay? Or even though we cannot follow his fullest character, at least we can try some of his amazing qualities in his life, okay? So that is the first thing and the first reason why we go for refuge to the Buddha, right? And then the Dhamma, that is the second jewel or the second refuge in Buddhism. Dhamma is the Buddha's teachings. Now, why we go for refuge to the Dhamma? It is to consider it as the framework of our spiritual practice. Buddha taught his amazing teachings for 45 years. And these teachings we consider as the Dhamma, right? So these teachings gives us amazing help to live our life and to understand the true meaning behind our life, right? So to provide this framework, provide this path, we go for refuge to the Dhamma. Now, how to truly go for refuge to the Dhamma is to practice it, right? Follow the Buddha's teachings and practice it. And that is the correct way to go for refuge to the Dhamma, okay? So first we take the role model and we follow his character, and also we follow his teachings, the Buddha's teachings. And third jewel, or the third refuge, is Sangha, the monastic community, the spiritual community, who have achieved the levels of spirituality. Okay, why we go for refuge to the Sangha, or this monastic community, or the spiritual community, is to give us the support for our spiritual practice. Because we all know we can't do this alone, all alone. We need a community. Everyone needs a community of people to grow. So when we get together and when we get in touch with this spiritual community, we can take advice from them. We can take the experiential advice from them and grow ourselves, right? So as a help, as a support for our spiritual practice, we go for refuge to the Sangha, the monastic community. So this is why we go for refuge. And this is the real reason behind going for refuge to the Triple Gems. So I hope you got some idea about the 3 refuges in Buddhism. So I wish you all, may all of you be healthy, happy and peaceful. Namo Buddhaya. Buddhism is considered as the religion of meditation. But if you ask your Buddhist friend, do you meditate? They'll probably say, no, not that much. I don't meditate that much. So the real question is, do all Buddhists meditate? And should you meditate to become a Buddhist? Well, the first thing that we need to understand is that the word Buddhist means for someone who follows the Buddha's path, right? So to truly become a Buddhist, you need to follow the Buddha's advice and you need to follow the Buddha's path. At least you must try to do that, right? And just because you are born to a Buddhist family doesn't mean that you truly become a Buddhist, okay? So then you may ask, should you meditate to become a Buddhist? Well, it depends on what you mean by meditation. If you portray the meditation as sitting in a quiet place, cross-legged, eyes closed, and concentrating, then it is not the only meditation. Meditation can be practiced while sitting down, while lying down, while walking, and while standing. So these all four postures we can practice the meditation. And also, you don't always need to close your eyes to meditate, okay? So to become a Buddhist, not only meditation that we must practice, there are a lot of things that we need to include to our life. So according to the Buddha's advice, there are 3 main practices that we practice in Buddhism. If someone is practicing these 3 practices, then we can call him a Buddhist, right? So what are these 3 practices? The first practice is called Sila. Sila can be translated into English as virtues, right? So as Buddhists, we follow 5 virtues. Every Buddhist has to follow 5 virtues. So what are these 5 virtues? First one is abstaining from killing beings. Second one is abstaining from stealing. Third virtue is abstaining from sexual misconduct. Fourth one is abstaining from telling lies. And the 5th one is abstaining from taking intoxicants. So these are the 5 virtues that we follow. So this is the cornerstone, and this is the first step of Buddhist path, Buddhist practice. That is to be virtuous. So now you can understand, before meditating, you also need to be virtuous. Now, why we need to practice these virtues? A monk asked from the Buddha, what is the purpose of being virtuous? Or what is the purpose of practicing these virtues? Then the Buddha says, why you need to practice virtues is to stay away from regrets in your life. Okay? If you take a closer look at these 5 virtues, by doing the opposite of these 5 virtues, that means killing animals, stealing, doing sexual misconduct, and telling lies, and taking intoxicants, these actions can lead to regret in life, right? One's regret. And the Buddha showed that regret is one of the biggest obstacles for someone's peace in life. If your heart is complaining about the actions and the things that you did in the past, and the things that you are doing right now, if your heart is regretting about it and complaining about it, that is a bigger obstacle to find peace in one's life. So to stay away from that regret and that disturbance to your mind, to your peace, the Buddha says, be virtuous. Live a virtuous life that your heart doesn't complain you about your actions, right? Be disciplined. In a simpler way, to be self-disciplined is to practice the virtues. And then the second practice is called samadhi. Samadhi can be translated into English as tranquility. And now this includes this meditational practice, right? But also it doesn't only mean that it is only meditation. There are so many other things that we practice to tranquilize our mind. One part of it is meditation, right? You have to sit down, go to a quiet place, close your eyes and contemplate and try to focus your mind, and then little by little your mind will become tranquilized and calm and peaceful. And also by practicing the mindfulness, we can tranquilize our mind. And by doing good things like good karma, helping people, right? We can practice this tranquility of our mind. And also, the sila that we mentioned earlier will help you to achieve a tranquilized mind. So the Buddha says you must practice virtues, you must practice sila in a way that it helps the tranquility of your mind, right? That is the sole purpose of practicing the sila. And then the tranquility. Now this includes the meditational practice. And then there's the third practice that we do. This is called prajna. Prajna can be translated into English as wisdom, right? So the Buddha showed us that how to achieve wisdom in life. And what Buddha meant by wisdom is ability to understand the true nature of life, the true impermanent nature of one's life, right? To do that, you need one part of it, you need the meditation, and also one part of that, you need the wise reflection. The Buddha says how to achieve the wisdom. First, you must listen to the Buddha's advice and listen to the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings well, right? You need to listen to it, and also you need to wisely reflect on it, right? Through wise considering and through wise reasoning, you must achieve this wisdom, right? So these are the 3 practices that we do to practice Buddhism, right? Every Buddhist must practice this, right? So the first part is, in a summary, the first part is you have to be virtuous, and also then you have to practice these meditational practices, and also you have to develop wisdom. So the sole purpose of those 2 practices, sila and samadhi, is to help developing the wisdom in life. So these are the 3 practices that we do to become Buddhist. And those who practice these 3 practices, they don't need to name themselves as Buddhists. They all are Buddhists, okay? They all are Buddha's followers, okay? So I hope you got some idea about this matter today. So, wish to see you from another video. Take care. Namo Buddhaya. The Buddha said, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. When one sees this with insight and wisdom, one turns away from suffering and dissatisfaction in life. So from today's video, let's talk about the three signatas of life. Three signatas, or in Pali we call it Tilakkhana, is one of the fundamental teachings of Buddhism. The Buddha taught us that these three signatas are the fundamental nature of everything around you and everything within you, right? Everything within you and everything around you carries these three natures of life. So what are these three natures? The first one is anicca. The Buddha said, the life is impermanent. Everything around you, everything within you is subject to impermanence, right? So anicca means impermanence. Then the second sign, the second signata of life is dukkha. Dukkha can be translated into English as suffering. It is the most common translation. And also it gives the meaning of dissatisfaction of life. Okay? So the second sign, the second nature of life is that it is suffering and dissatisfaction. And the third is called anatta. Anatta can be translated into English as not self, right? So these are the three signs of everything around you and everything within you. So how can we understand this teaching of the Buddha? So first we'll take a look at anicca. What do you mean by anicca? The translation is impermanence. How can we understand impermanence? So there are these levels of anicca or levels of impermanence that we can understand. Okay, the first is the most peripheral and the most superficial impermanence of life, right? That everyone can understand. For an example, like seasons change, right? It is an impermanence. And sometimes these rivers, they dry up, right? It is an impermanence. These buildings collapse, right? It is an impermanence. Your car breaks down, your laptop doesn't stop working. This is more peripheral and more superficial, and everyone can understand this kind of impermanence in life. And there is this second level of impermanence that is more subjective to you, right? Your body starts aging, okay? Your body is under constant change, right? It is aging. That is an impermanence. And then your body is subject to illness or sickness, right? All of a sudden you fall ill. One time you was healthy and you become ill. That is also an impermanence. And then sometimes people change, their mindsets change, their personalities change. This is something that is more subjective to you. It is very closer to your life, right? And there is this more subtler and very subtle way of impermanence that lies beneath within all of our lives. For an example, who you are, okay, what you call yourself is a bunch of experiences, right? You perceive this world and you connect to this world, you get connected to this world through these perceptions, right? These experiences, you see the things from your eyes, you listen to things from your ears, you smell things, you taste things, you feel things to your body, you think from your mind. So all these experiences are under constant change. Just take a look at your life, right? Now, if I ask from you, what happened to all the words that you heard from this video, in the beginning of this video? What happened to them now? They have been changed now. They have become impermanent. So in life, all these experiences, right? And all these perceptions how we perceive this world, all these experiences that we get connected with this world are under constant change. They have this transient nature. Okay? So that is the very subtler and the most deepest impermanence in life, right? So what happens, how this becomes impermanent? The Buddha said why this becomes impermanence is because everything is conditioned. Everything arises due to conditions. For an example, when we see things, right, there should be certain conditions to see. for us, for our vision, right? When we hear things, there are certain conditions that occur within us, right? For example, if someone blamed us, okay, in a faraway place, from a faraway place, let's say in another country, someone is blaming us, right? Do we get angry? We don't get angry, right? Because we didn't hear it. Now, when we hear this, okay, as soon as we hear this, now we become angry. So there are certain conditions that they need to come together for our perceptions and for our experiences in this world. So the nature of these conditions is that they are also under constant change. Okay, when the conditions change, our experiences change. That means who you are is under constant change, which we call anicca. Okay, so that is the way that we can understand the impermanence. Now, to understand this subtler impermanence, okay, this deepest impermanence, everyone cannot understand this. This need the meditational development, a developed mind, well-disciplined mind to do that. That is why we practice this insight meditation. Okay, so this is the anicca that Buddha talked about. Okay, this is the impermanent. That is the first sign of life, that everything around you, everything within you is under constant change. That is the first thing. Now, if I ask from you, if someone expect the permanence from these impermanent things, right? If someone expect things to be permanent, experiences to be permanent, when the very nature of everything is impermanent, what happens to that person? Would that person get what they expect, what he expect? No, right? And what happens to you when you don't get what you expect? You are dissatisfied, right? And you suffer. And that is what you call the second signata of life, the second nature of life. That is, life is subject to suffering. Life consists of dissatisfaction, okay? Because we expect things to be permanent, our experiences to be permanent, when the very nature of everything, every experience within us is impermanence. Okay, I heard this wonderful quote from a famous monk. He said, impermanence doesn't make us suffer. What makes us suffer is wanting things to be permanent when the very nature of things are impermanent. Okay, so the second signata of life is the dukkha, the dissatisfaction. Why dukkha? Because things are impermanent and we expect things to be permanent, right? Letting go of these expectations to be permanent is what you call the realization, the liberation, right? Expecting things to be permanent when the things are impermanent is called the ignorance in life. Okay, so the second signata is that life is unsatisfactory, right? Everything around you cannot satisfy you to the fullest extent, right? For an example, we love every experience to be permanent, and we think that every experience is permanent. For an example, let's say when you have a happy feeling, okay, let's say you have a happy and a pleasurable feeling. What you expect what you expect from that experience? We expect, okay, I wish this experience will last forever with me. It will stay with me forever. But it isn't, right? How many happy experiences have you gone through? And now they're gone. They cease to exist. That is the nature of life. Okay? Let's say we are going through a difficult experience, painful experience. What we think, okay, this pain will last forever. I will have to suffer forever. But the very nature of life is that it is also under constant change. Okay? So this is what we need to understand. Okay? So the second signata of life is called dukkha. And what is the third signata? The third sign of life, it is called anatta. Anatta is, in English we call it not self. Right? The Buddha said, if something is impermanent, okay, if something is, if the life itself if the life around you, if the life within you is under constant change, can you expect any unchangeable and permanent self even within you? No. Okay? So, anatta means no permanent self, right? Even our consciousness changes according to our perceptions. That is the nature of life. So even the consciousness change, right? If even the consciousness conditioned, right? Then we can't expect any self to be permanent. Okay? This is called anatta. Okay? The not self nature of life. The perfect example for life is the flame. For an example, let's say we light up a candle and you can see a flame, right? Now, you can point out and show the flame, and we see the flame as an object. It appears to be like an object. But if you take a closer look at this flame, the nature of flame is that it is not one permanent thing, one unchanging thing. It is under constant change. It is a process, right? It is the process of combustion, right? If it wasn't, the flame always depend on the conditions. When the conditions are there, the flame exists. When the conditions are not there, the flame ceases to exist. For an example, let's say can you remove the flame from the candle? You can't. Why? Because the flame entirely depends on that condition, the wick, the wax, the heat and everything. Okay? So our life is always a collection of conditions. Okay? When the conditions are there, the experiences arise. When the conditions become impermanent, the experiences change. This is the very nature of life. So these are the three signatas of everything around you. Look around you, right? Everything, that objects, things, people, right? Your experiences, your body, everything has this very nature. So the Buddha said, if someone understood with developed wisdom, right? If someone understood this very nature of life, he turns away from suffering because he doesn't expect things to be permanent, because he knows that everything around him and everything within him is impermanent. So I hope you got some light about these three signatas of life. So I wish you, may you be healthy and may you be happy and may you be able to realize these three signatas of life in this life. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Welcome and welcome back to another video. From today's video, we're going to talk about wisdom, how to understand it, and what helps all of us to develop this wisdom. Now, what is the common idea about wisdom in the world? There's this common misunderstanding about wisdom, that is, they say that people who know more and they're wise, right? To be wise, you have to know more. In one sense, it is correct, but it is not always correct, right? The people who know more are not always wise, right? And also, even though you learn more and more, it doesn't mean you become a wise person, right? There's a nice saying about wisdom that says, intelligence or knowledge is to understand that tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is to not to put it in a fruit salad, right? So understand that, yes, knowledge is a power, right? Knowledge is a superpower that gives all of us a good experience about this world and good understanding about this world. But if we did not develop the wisdom, right? If we did not understand what wisdom is, then we may not be able to be wise, right? So what is wisdom? Wisdom can be understood as this. Wisdom is the ability to understand what is good and what is bad. Wisdom is the ability to understand what brings happiness to yourself and to the others, and to implement those things that you can do, right? And also, the Buddha explains about the wisdom as follows. The Buddha says, and what is the power of wisdom? Here, a noble disciple is wise. He possesses the wisdom that discerns arising and passing away, which is noble and penetrative and leads to the complete destruction of suffering. This is called the power of wisdom. Now, according to the Buddha, the wisdom is to understand the reality of life. That means the impermanence of life, right? The Buddha says that the inherent nature of life is that it is subjected to arising and passing away. And arising and passing away. This is the common phenomena of impermanence, right? So if someone can understand and if someone can realize this true nature, and that person is wise. That is the Buddha's explanation about wisdom. Because Buddha always focuses on understanding the reality of life. Okay? So Buddha explains what are the things that helps all of us to develop this wisdom, how to be a wiser person. These are the things that Buddha taught us to be a wiser person. You should implement these. You have to associate these things to be wise. So the Buddha explains these 4 things that helps us to develop wisdom. The first thing is, the Buddha says, association with superior persons will help you to develop the wisdom. That means the people who we associate is really crucial, it's really important when it comes to development of the wisdom, right? There's a wonderful saying that says, who you are is the average of 5 people who you closely associate, right? Take a look at the people who you closely associate, right? Or 5 people. So who you are is the average of those 5 people. So association is really, really important when it comes to development in life, development in spiritual life and also material life, both, right? So that is why you need to hang out with people, to stay with people who can inspire you, who can motivate you, who can guide you to a correct path, right? So that is why the Buddha says, associate with a person who is superior to you in wisdom. Right? In spiritual practice, if you're following the spiritual practice, you have to associate with someone who is superior to you, right? So the Buddha says, always try to be with someone who has higher qualities than you, or someone who has equal qualities to you. But never be with people, never associate with people who has lower qualities than you, right? So that is why the Buddha said, to develop the wisdom, you need to have a good companionship. You need to have a good association with people, right? And the second thing that Buddha explains that helps all of us to develop wisdom is hearing the good Dhamma, right? Hearing about the reality of life, listening to the reality of life. When it comes to a spiritual practice, when it comes to Buddhism, the Buddha says that you need to listen to the Buddha's teachings. You need to learn the Buddha's teachings and wisely reflect on it, right? When you do that, the wisdom develops, right? The Buddha says proper attention. Next thing is the proper attention. You have to listen to the Dhamma, and also you have to have proper attention when listening and also while practicing. So as the final thing, the Buddha explains, practice in accordance with the Dhamma will help you to develop the wisdom, right? That means when it comes to Buddhist practice, you need to follow the Buddha's path, follow the guidance of the Buddha and practice it. And then you can develop the wisdom in Buddhist practice. So these are the 4 things that helps all of us to develop the wisdom. The first thing is association with superior people, proper people, and good people. Second thing is hearing the good Dhamma, listening to the Buddha's teachings, and proper attention to the Buddha's teachings. And then finally, practice in according to the Buddha's teachings. These are the 4 things that will help us to develop the wisdom in Buddhist path. So I hope you got some idea about wisdom today. So I wish all of you, may all of you be happy, healthy, and may all of you be able to be wise in this very life. Namo Buddhaya.